afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start all over. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Building and Fire Board of Appeals General Meeting, and thank you for joining us today. Today's agenda is rather short, and we'll begin by a roll call, please.
Sure. Board Member John Tatulian.
Present.
Board Member Stephen Lee.
Present.
Chairman Eric Kashishian.
Here.
Board Member Ara Aharonian.
Yes.
Board Member Saben Hanesian.
Here.
Ready for number 2?
Yes, please.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, April 11th, 2018 on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
Thank you.
Item number 3, if I can go on. Presentations and commendations. Mr. Bear, please.
Move up here so I talk straight to you.
All right.
To update you on what's going on in building safety, first thing is we actually have a request for proposals out. Our contracts for contract services are ending at the end of this fiscal year. We have an advertisement, and we're going through the interview process on new contractors to provide plan check and inspection services. So that the plan is to get that all by July 1st. So if you hear things, we've actually met with some of the contractors, and we've gone through and explained the proposal, and they are coming. He says, I believe the RFPs from them are due in the next 2 weeks. So we'll be processing those, just so that you know what we're doing.
Do you do that on a yearly basis, or it's a 2, 3, 4-year contract?
They're multiple years.
Okay.
The last time we did it for the initial contract was for a 3-year period with an option to extend it for 2 additional years, so it was actually a 5-year contract. We're hoping to do that this time. The city spends, building safety spends about $200,000 to $300,000 a year on contract services. And so this will put in place contractors that we use to provide the inspection staff and the contract plan review.
Okay.
So only the inspection or the outside work too?
We've utilized it by contracting with these third parties to bring individuals in that work day to day in the city as inspectors. For the plan check, it's a little different. We have a project, we actually mail it to them, they perform the plan review, we verify that all the clearances are done, and then we get the permits issued.
Who are the current contractors for plan check services?
The current ones? Currently we use California Code Check, JAS Pacific, and ASI, which is it's a unique one, and it was at the end of the year, at the end of last year when we had a direct need for an individual. They were the only ones that had a professional in the trades that we wanted, and we were able to do an emergency contract and bring them in. We've balanced it. We're not going over our contract amounts for this fiscal year, or for any year, but we need to get these contracts in place by the end of June.
So do you have selected contractors you send the RFPs to, or you just open it up to everyone?
Opened it up to everyone and made sure that our current partners were notified that we were going through this.
All right.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the California Buildings officials had their annual business meeting at the end of March. And so we participated in it. We went up there, and I wanted to give you a briefing of what's going on the state level for different building departments around here. One of the big discussions was disaster response. All the wildfires that came in, it was a very good discussion with all the building officials of the jurisdictions that were directly affected, how they responded to the fires, how they're responding now to the aftermath. Because we had representatives from Napa Valley that had the big fire, Santa Barbara, Montecito, Ventura County. You know, they lost many homes, and now they're looking at how do you rebuild, how do they help with the expedition of the process to get these people's lives back together. They also talked about what a direct impact it has on your own staff. very stressful when you're going through this, and how do you help the community while at the same time you're under stress? So they had some good talking points on that, which we bring back, we relay to our staff and prepare them in case anything happened. We had the San Rafael fire a few years ago, so we actually have some experience going through that, but it's not something you want, but you have to prepare for.
Mr. Yeah, go ahead.
This fire, are some fire or nature? The fire happened.
These,
Santa Barbara.
yeah, those were, think they're still going through what was the direct cause, but they have looked at the evidence, and like I said, it wasn't where somebody went out and said it that I've heard, but when they happened, the weather conditions just
Windy.
were an amazing phenomenon that just fed upon itself, where the firestorms and everything just, there was not much they could do. So.
Did they say if there is any federal funds available for recovery, disaster recovery?
They were declared emergencies, and so the state and FEMA both get funds to go through and rebuild, but it's still a stress on them. You know, little things like the zoning regulations that limit what they could rebuild or can't rebuild. All those things are local control that each one of these are individually having to deal with. So how to get the word out, the efforts that they make to prepare people when they come in, what they need, what they're going to have to go through, where they're going to have to get their finance, how little simple things like how do you get a hold of your insurance company? And so these jurisdictions were providing their community with all kinds of services, and the building departments were integral in providing that outreach.
So when they declare it a disaster zone, obviously the items that you mentioned, but does the local jurisdiction, like the building and safety department, the fire, also benefit from any of the funds that are available?
They do.
Can you hire more staff to?
Every year they will do that. I could speak to what went on after the Northridge earthquake because that was it was a national disaster. You reach out for federal funds, and the city that I was employed with at that time actually had contracts that were paid for by FEMA to supplement their staffing. We actually did during the Ventura fires, we actually provided some inspection staff to go up there and assist them in their evaluations. We had, especially in the need for electrical disconnects and things like that, we actually sent some of our inspectors up to help with their, during the time and while the fires were going on, to help supplement them. And that's happens through Calbo. They have an emergency call out. You can go for mutual aid, call Calbo, and they ask around for all the other jurisdictions to see if they have people available. They know that every community is right. They have tight staffing, but you know, one from here, one from there, one from here, and it adds up. And there was a good response that actually Ventura County, who we responded to, really appreciated the fact that we could provide that assistance.
Are you also joined by the fire department during your building and safety meeting? You get input from the.
Yes. At Calbo, there was a big response, and I'll go into it later. We had a report from each of the different state departments, including the state fire marshal. But that's about 2 or 3 more down. Okay. The next one is resiliency. The big thing is resiliency, trying to make a proactive approach to retrofit possibly the vulnerable buildings. This year, Glendale was selected to be part of the state insurance industry's Bolt and Brace program. And we actually have it on our website. That will reimburse property owners of single-family homes that don't have the foundations bolting in to receive up to $3,000 to assist in their retrofit of their project. So the state insurance commission sets a pool of money aside so that it can be divvied out each year. You have to register at the beginning of the year, and if you're selected, because they only have so much money each year, if you're selected, you will be eligible for their reimbursement. We've already trained staff on all the different possible retrofit plans that can come in so we could expedite the service because there's timelines on their end. Now that we've been selected, we are always on that list. So we will be on that list until everyone has a chance to do it. For us, for our community, that's really beneficial.
But you don't have a mandatory program, right? It's just voluntary basis.
It's only voluntary. Right now it's voluntary. With the resiliency, besides the single family, there was also the soft story issues for multi-residential. City of LA has gone mandatory with that. They have a program. They're notifying people. We have not. The state, in State Bill AB 2681, is actually working its way through. Calbo is watching it. It would require each jurisdiction to identify vulnerable buildings and maintain a database of those vulnerable buildings. We haven't done it yet. It's not mandatory. It would be a cost, and we don't know where this is going to go. But even that one doesn't mandate a retrofit. It just mandates that you identify the buildings.
And possibly pass an ordinance.
Possibly pass an ordinance. The intent, and like I said, building safety's involvement is, especially with existing buildings, codes change. We want to preserve the existing infrastructure of buildings, but as we learn more, the buildings may not be as safe as what we think. And when does it become a time to require owners to invest in upgrading them? We currently have in our code adoption, if they do over a certain percentage of work on a building, we then require it to be updated to meet current codes or updated so that it is stronger than what it was. But that's limited. It's on a voluntary basis and it's based on when they come in with their projects.
Jan, you mentioned something about Ventura fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about the La Tuna fire that was before that? Because we participated through our fire department in that fire too.
We did. We were lucky it did not encroach into Glendale.
Except very few.
Yes, very close. We have
300.
our fire marshal who can tell us later on about that if you want. But we didn't have any buildings damaged in the fire. They had like I says, it was a double-edged sword because especially Montecito and La Tuna, they had fires and then they had floods. So addressing the issues once the first thing happens and then the second thing happens, it's a matter of staying on top of preparation and knowing your community and knowing where the vulnerabilities are.
Please.
This retrofitting for commercial buildings or residential buildings
The Bolton Brace is only for single-family dwellings.
only? How about
Right.
commercial?
Commercial, it's still up. Everything is outside of the unreinforced masonry, which the city has required them to be updated. We don't have any other mandatory programs. There are programs and information available for tilt-up buildings, concrete, ductile frame buildings, retrofit of the steel frame moment connections. All of those have been identified as potential issues, and in the industry, retrofit requirements are known and have been developed. The city hasn't made them mandatory. We're leaving it up to building owners to decide whether or not or when to do them. I think all of them know that they're going to have to do it, but it's just a matter of when. And that's an economic decision on their part based on a lot of factors that are beyond us right now.
So, John, do you even think people know that they probably are living in a house or an apartment or something that does require the foundation retrofit? I mean, do they even know?
If you look at There's certain things that we aren't directly involved in, but when you look at a sale of a building,
Yeah.
there's certain disclosures that they have.
Yes.
So when people buy it, they have an idea. So, you know, the pool of people that may be living in one of these things for a long enough period of time where they've never had to sell it or purchase it and not be notified is probably small. We've had a lot of success. We issue probably 10 to 15 retrofit permits for single-family dwellings a month, and that's before we were even in the bolt and brace system. There's a lot of contractors and engineers around the area that promote the service and are getting really good compliance voluntarily.
It's pretty good. So there is awareness out there. All right, very good.
Yes. One of the other issues it brought up is the professional issues that are addressing building and safety right now, and that is we're an aging group of people in building and safety. And they've done studies in the next 5 years, 60 to 70% are eligible to retire. So trying to get a new group of people to come in and fill these positions and enter the profession, the building and safety profession, both inspection-wise, plan check-wise, administrative-wise, is a big topic all over the state. And part of our Building and Safety Month, we've done that. Last year we did the career fair, and we had people here so that they could come and ask questions. If we get our next group here, they'll come in and talk about the items for this year's event. But everyone was working about how do we get people in? How do we get them interested or even aware that this is a profession? And so when Ara had our discussion about we should at least meet quarterly to explain what building and safety is doing, we're going to use this every time to also promote what we do as a good profession. So thank you for the opportunity.
Can you share with us some of the top few reasons, the challenge of recruiting that demographic?
Good question.
I think if you talk to Eric or myself or anything, when we were in high school or college, nobody had this thing, I'm going to go work for a building department. You come up through the trades, or in our case, City of Los Angeles actually went out to the different universities to recruit engineers. So it was more, wow, how did this happen? We've been actually fortunate for the city of Glendale. We identified some individuals that came to work as youth workers through the Glendale Youth Authority, showed an interest. We promoted. They happened to be involved in engineering classes, which worked great. We hired them on as hourlies while they were going to college. And now we've actually hired Celine Sarkalou to a full-time plan check position. So we're actually developing them in-house. Our inspectors, some of the younger ones that we have, we actually rated off of construction sites. They showed interest in it. And so we're being really proactive. But people don't just think about, oh yeah, I always wanted to be a building inspector, or I wanted to be a plan reviewer. A lot of them don't even know what it is. So it's not just the statewide level, it's a national level that ICC, the International Code Council, is getting involved in. So we're promoting it. And, it was a big discussion up there. And as they were talking, everyone was looking around and counting gray hairs, and there was quite a few.
No, definitely it's a serious matter, but the reality is we don't know if this, the building and safety function, let's say, will remain as it is in the next 30 years, or it's going to completely different because of technology and whatnot and everything else. Or are we going to still do the same thing that we're doing now?
Right.
So we don't know that either.
And from, you have 30 years in a career like I do or Eric does, and you've seen the changes. But the things that stay the same is you need somebody that's knowledgeable, that is providing that quality control, and some of the things we catch are really, really important. It's not that we're focusing on the unimportant things or the minimal things, but we're finding things that to really make it work and to make it safe. And so getting people interested in thinking that way or being part of a group that does that, we've been successful in recruiting ours. Glendale says, I'll brag, it's one of the best departments in the state. We have a staff that, to a person, I would not change for anyone else. It's just, we are that good. And lucky to be involved in it. But, you know, where's the next group? Because we have people that will be retiring soon. Sure. And the transition between it, we think about it all the time.
I think that should be something pushed to universities. Because, you know, going back for my civil and industrial manufacturing background, there was not really an individual class that dealt with, you know, coding, building safety, you know, fire, those type of issues.
I went to Cal Poly Pomona. Go Broncos. One of the unusual things there was I had two instructors, and one of them says, first thing you're going to do is go buy a building code. The other one says you're going to go buy the steel manual. Because they knew what we needed to know, and so you learned earlier. Some of them dealing with theory don't do that. But that's for the plan check side. What about the management side, or even the permit issuance side, or even now the next one that I'm going to go into is the technology. You know, building departments can't operate unless they incorporate technology. And so now we're needing a different skill set. Up there, technology was a big one that we talked about. They identified 9 different areas that technology is being used for in building departments. We have permitting systems, online permitting, or even issuing in our permit center, electronic plan review, queuing systems, monitoring how do you route people around, inspection systems and mobile devices. What do they use when they go out in the field? Database, how does everything get archived? How do people bring it back up afterwards? You know, a filing system that is now digital as opposed to the old file cabinets. Website information, how do you process things online and get people involved? Social media, do you have a social media presence? Cashiering and financial systems. And personnel information, just keeping track of days off and things like that. Of these 9 items that they identified, Glendale is doing 8 of them. And we're in the process of evaluating electronic plan review service, you know, modules. But everyone else we've converted, and we are digital to some extent. Maybe we can do better, increase it. But that's part of the whole thing with technology. The things that they brought up was, well, what upgrade schedule do you have? If you bought something 5 years ago, is it even relevant today? How do you keep it current? How do you keep it updated? You know, do you have big computers and servers here? Are you going to go to a cloud-based service? What are the costs associated with those? How do you support it? Same thing as we bring in technology, you know, the same people that are doing inspections and plan review, how are they going to adapt or incorporate technology into what we do? So, you know, all these issues are identified, and that's why we go to CalBOA, so that we can be informed of the big picture and bring that information back. How do you develop your program goals? You know, we always talk about the paperless office. Well, what does that mean? Well, does it provide efficiencies? Does it save time? Does it make the information that you do or the product that we produce better and more valuable to the community? All those are what we need to establish as you develop what direction you're going with technology. We're very blessed here to have a very open IS department that, you know, we can talk to about these things and develop what we're doing. And we're already in discussions for the upgrades or replacements of our systems and getting an RFP out there so we can evaluate it. That's coming. So we'll keep you informed and bring that information back on a quarterly basis. One of the other things that was up there, is we mentioned earlier, is the different state agencies. They always give an update. The big thing that all the state agencies, Building Standards Commission, is, believe it or not, we're already starting the adoption process of the next building code. We adopted ours the beginning of 2017. Now here we are, 2018, and we are preparing for adoption in 2020. The state agencies are reviewing all the model codes that have been published. They're coming up with their list of amendments and changes. They're going through public hearings. They're looking for volunteers to be on the different committees to evaluate them. And so that is part of a process that starts now and will not be complete until 2020, and we will be bringing you the city amendments as well as any information as this code adoption goes forward. With that, you have from the Energy Commission, they're looking at the solar, photovoltaic solar, zero emission structures, or zero emission vehicles, how we adapt, making sure people can put in chargers in their houses and in their buildings, and how do we do that? Electrical storage is another big one. Originally, the Energy Commission was looking at 2020 to be when a house is built or a building is built, it would have zero energy, net energy, which means they produced enough on site to cover what they needed to operate. They've gone away from that because the conversion from, well, if they have some gas and some electrical, how much extra electrical do they have to bring in the gas? They say, well, that's too much. Now they're looking at just net zero energy use. And to do that, they have to come up with battery storage so that they can charge during the day and use at night. So Tesla and some of the other ones are actually coming up with devices that battery storages. So now we're looking at how do you monitor battery storages on site. So again, technology is coming. It's coming in a different way. The Energy Commission is looking to make sure that all that is taken care of. We had the Department of State Architect dealing with the accessibility in CASP. They're keeping the CASP. They have a very low passing rate for the CASP exam, and so there was talk about, well, should we have lowered a little or do this? And they said, no, we're going to keep it as hard as we can because we want experts in accessibility. How that, in the long run, plays out, we train our employees every year on accessibility. We push people to take the CASP exam and study for it. I think we may not have number-wise a lot of CASP certified people on staff, but we have, everyone's knowledgeable on the subject and make sure that we're following it. Housing and community development, HCD, was a very big topic, and it affects us because we have the accessory dwelling units, ADUs, that have come in. During the last year, this has been statewide. It's a push. The state is 2 million dwelling units behind what they need. They're trying to figure out how they can get jurisdictions to authorize new units and basically provide low-income housing. They're even delving into emergency housing. And that you find that on the news almost nightly when they talk about Orange County and the tent cities and where do they put the people. They're coming up with, rather than full compliance with the building code, how can we do something different to address this emergency? State Fire Marshal, again, with all the fires in the state, their issue was, hey, we need to reevaluate the urban wildland interface zones and how we regulate that. That's where a lot of the fire storms happened, and they're going to evaluate that as they go through the code process. The other one is cannabis use. It was very clear that the way we do not, building code will never address cannabis. If you grow products regardless of what they are. Outside, it's a farm. If you grow them inside, it's a greenhouse. If you sell it, it is a retail store. If you process it, it is manufacturing. So even though it's a big topic, statewide approval, we are not going to treat that product any different than oregano or flowers or anything else.
So there is no special occupancy for that.
There's no special occupancy. Their manufacturing process has unique needs, and people are learning how to address the needs to make sure it stays code compliant. So that was a big on the, again, the State Fire Marshal is well aware of the issue, and they're trying to make these standardized. We have, Calbo has, well, as all these things go through, the codes actually change in two different ways. One is through the code change process, and every now and then we get a new bill that just gets adopted. The unisex bathrooms came through that way. The low-flow toilets, they came through that way. So every now and then they come through. So Calbo has a big branch that is just studying the bills that go through. So we do have that on watch. Last thing they discussed was fees. Fees, they had different ways to go about doing fee studies and things like that. Whether we stay with our valuation-based system or we go to an hourly-based system or some other way to compensate. They said there's no clear decision, do which one that you're comfortable with, but make sure that you cover all of the items. Like we're going to be looking at, as you implement technology, as you look for the levels of staffing you want, how do you make sure that that's recoverable? So during the next year, we'll probably be coming to you with several different ideas on fees and compensation and how we do that, just so that you're involved and ultimately to cover all our costs by the time we get to June of 19.
Just before the fiscal year.
Yep.
But by then, the decision is already probably made, right?
Well, we hope that the studies and everything have been approved. Again, when we do the established fees, it's to recover the cost to the city.
Right.
We're not in it to make a profit, but we do want to recover everything. And if you look at your annual or your reports that were included in the back that I'm not going to go over, but you can ask me questions if you had any. We're right about 1.1 recovery, which means we collect what we spend. Some of the things costs that may go up next year is as we look to implement more technology and we need more funding for that. Can we recover it? And how are we going to recover it?
Talking about cost recovery, I see that during the 6-month period from June till January, it's been fluctuating. In November, it went down. Now it went up again to 1.132. So it's almost there.
Yeah, we're right at. We're not making money. We are recovering our costs. And like I says, if you look at the reports, the fluctuation in permits issued and valuation are a lot dependent on size of projects, but we have to keep the staff here so we could respond quickly. If we're going to have a good economic development program in the city, you have to be able to respond through building the safety to get those businesses open. So we're part of a strategic vision for this city being business friendly, being safe, and building safety is right in the middle of it.
Thank you. So, Jan, excuse me. So, aside from the additional funds that you will need and for, let's say, technology and whatnot, does the city increase the building permit fees on a yearly basis based on CPI, or is yeah?
Currently, we haven't done a sufficient study to try to modify the fees in any other way other than cost of living increases. Every year we use the CPI to increase the ones. There's certain ones that we do study.
I see.
And so every year there may be 2 or 3 of the fees. Most of them are single-use fees, like a water heater or something like that, where we will study that independently. But we haven't done the big one, which is actually the building permit fees. So In the coming year, if we're going to look at recovering all of our cost on that, that's where the study, that's why it's going to take at least a year to assess on that point, should we change it or change the valuation schedule.
I see.
Question.
Yeah.
Back to salaries about the inspectors. You're saying lots of inspectors are going to retire, and you're looking for new inspectors. Comparing to other cities, our city's salary is higher or lower or even?
Even.
Even.
We're not substantially above and beyond almost all the cities in here. We recently had one individual that was working for us who got received an offer to go to a different jurisdiction but go back into a trade, a plumbing trade with that jurisdiction. And the salaries for their plumber were higher than our inspectors. So our salaries are good, but are they so good that we're going to steal people? No. The other thing that every jurisdiction is working with is CalPERS. CalPERS make a big encroachment. CalPERS, even with ours, we have different levels of retirement systems. The new ones that come in have a lower rate, which makes it easier for them to transfer to other jurisdictions. We're also in a heavy competition with these third-party vendors that we hire to provide this overflow of service, but at the same time they need staff. And they're far more flexible and can offer a lot more, and they're going to be the ones that are basically utilizing all the people that retire. So,
Well, as far as that is concerned, I mean, it's not just the salary that they need to look at. It's the overall benefit package. Yeah, that makes the difference. A lot of people, I mean, just look at the salary and say, oh, this such and such city pays the 5% more, I'm going there. But next thing they find out, and when you look at overall benefit package, probably wasn't worth it.
right.
So,
Like I said, we're competitive. We're right in the 10-city average, and the personnel department says we're not going to be the highest, we're not going to be the lowest, we're going to be comparable and offer a good wage for the position. Again, when the supply and demand, and there's a large demand and a low supply, and people have options. Same thing as when the construction industry booms, we're competing for what they're hiring. So it makes it difficult sometimes.
When you're at Calbo, you get a chance to obviously interact with all the building officials. Outside of our, let's say, Tri-City area, which cities in California would you say we're aligned closely with, and you can say we are peers, or you can draw upon
we're better than all of them, but
which cities are looking up to us?
It's interesting. Building Safety Month, we've had events for the past 4 years, and each year it gets bigger and better, where this year ICC actually called us and said, hey, will you participate in our roundtable phone conference to share what you're doing with the rest of the country? And so we did, and they thought our ideas were really innovative. It started small, and each year we try something new. We started with just bringing in education. In fact, Building Safety Month is the next one. We scheduled a series of education. We had accessibility and energy and products that came in. And we opened up the trainings to anyone that wanted to attend. Next year, we tried a whole different set of trainings. And then last year, we actually had a career fair where we invited everybody, and we held it out in the courtyard. This year, it's basically a community event. May 23rd, we're going to have in the courtyard over 25 different groups and vendors and suppliers, and we've made arrangements to have food on hand. We're going to be providing seminars on how building and safety is good for local businesses. We're going to have, you know, Tesla, all these groups that provide services and information are going to be here in one day. And we're going to shut down our counter a little early that day to invite the contractors and the engineers that are here to participate. Come on out, meet these people, meet each other, bring the community out so that they can see if you're going to do a project, where are you going to go, who are you going to handle it. Building safety is really pushing the limits of what other cities have done. And so we're really proud about that. We're proud about the committee that is involved in it, the individuals that have promoted it, and this event's going to be really special. In addition, we have Simpson Strong Tie coming back for a series. We're going to host a training for the Energy Code in June. So we have a lot of events and a lot of support from the community. We're offering a scholarship for individuals from the college that can write about what a career in building and safety looks like. Why? So that at least we know, that, hey, they're going to try to get a couple $100, but we're going to get people who now learn what we do. We brought that up at Calbo, and it was recognized. They're saying, you guys are really being innovative. We're trying different things. We have young, you know, we brought in some young people, and we're getting young thoughts, and, you know, that's the way we're pushing. We're not sitting back doing it the same old way. We're looking to do it differently and be creative.
You know, that's a great idea, but how do we do public outreach? How do we advertise so everyone will show up to these kind of events and whatnot?
Again,
not just the contractors who know about it.
We're putting flyers in our office. We're putting, again, we have a month to go. That's one of the reasons why we're here, so we can promote building and safety. Coming up May 1st, you'll see the banners flying in the courtyard for Building and Safety Month. We're on the Basin Chapter website. We're promoting it. In fact, the LA Basin Chapter of ICC is going to be participating here and actually contributing for some of the scholarship for the kids that write these essays.
How about the local TV channel or anything like that, just to reach out to everyone?
We are doing a public service announcement that will be on GTV6.
Okay.
We always have a portion of the web page identified for Building and Safety Month, and that hasn't been updated yet, but it will be shortly. Okay. We have flyers all over town. If you probably passed 10 Building and Safety Month posters on your way into the conference room today. So we are promoting. We have social media working. The department's social media is getting out there, pushing these things out. Again, every year something new, and we're learning. We'll look at any idea you have and try to make it work.
Yeah. And that's how you're going to get the new generation involved and interested in our business.
Yeah.
So hopefully they will join.
Yes, we participated in the Earth Day, Glendale's Earth Day, and Building and Safety has a booth. Building and Safety never had a booth before. We have a booth. We show up, and we did it once, and we're like, wow, what do we have to keep people? Next year we got coloring books and things like that because we want the little kids, and we had pictures of them in their hard hats and their inspection vests. So we were really pulling to try to get these pieces so that they understand it.
Great.
So I think I went into the first one and the last one, and I think we're good. Anything else you have questions on, I'm here for.
We have very enthusiastic board members, and they show very much interest, so they ask all these questions, and I hope you don't mind that we're taking so much time, but I think it shows that everyone is interested to learn. And
I love this interaction with all of you because, like I said, you're part of us and we're part of you. We're a team, and we're really trying to make the program long-lasting and progressive and keep moving forward. And so feedback from you on what we can do, and like I said, information that you have, we love it.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Jan, before I let you go, I have one question I forgot. Regarding those fires, again, back to the fires mentioned in Ventura County and whatnot, and you said Calvo, they were making presentation. They had some people had some issues whether they can rebuild what they had lost, as far as goes back to planning and zoning laws. Well, I know, and I'm sure you know, that both cities have certain provisions in their code, like zoning code, that does allow, once an emergency is declared or a disaster is declared, they can rebuild what they had to the original condition, no more, no less. Well, less, yes, but no more, without going through the current zoning requirements. I don't know about Glendale, first of all, if you can comment on that. Secondly, didn't they mention anything about that, Ventura County?
Ventura County, I've actually been reading articles. It wasn't mentioned up there as much, but it was mentioned that they're looking at, do they let them use it? The building burned down to the foundation. Do they get to use the existing foundation? Do they know if it's reinforced, if it's rubble? You know? So each building has a unique case. In general, you know, everyone wants to make the buildings taller or more fire resistant or a different peak in the roof. Or if you have a blank canvas, do you make alterations or don't you? And then how much alterations to what was there are you allowed to do and still consider it the same? It's a hard, there's no one answer because every project and every owner is different. Ventura actually, you know, if you look in the Zillow and some of those, all of a sudden you see, hey, there's a bunch of vacant lots for sale in Ventura. But they had 2,200 people that just lost their home. Their rental market went crazy. You can't rent in Ventura because all those people needed a place to go. When they're building back, what kind of insurance did they have? Were they covered or weren't they covered? So many sad stories and so many opportunities for the city or the jurisdiction to step in and say, okay, we're going to treat you like an individual, we're going to treat you with respect, and we're going to see what we can do. But again, everyone takes time, and there's unique things for every one of them. But you know, having a blanket answer doesn't really work.
Well, I wasn't referring to the safety aspects of it. There's no doubt that buildings will have to be built to today's standards. I was more talking about the massing of the building. Let's say you had a 3,000 square foot home and it burned down. But today the zoning law only allows 1,000 square foot. Are you not able to rebuild your 3,000 square foot residence? That was the question. Of course, they have to comply with the building and safety standards, current code standards. No doubt.
I don't believe we have. I would have to check with our planners. I have not heard, because I know that when the San Rafael fire happened, they had to pass special legislation to address, you know, what they could build back and where. But again, it is going to come back into every case, every fire, depending on where it is or disaster. You know,
Well, it has
if everything
been declared.
if everything breaks down for, say, the soft story building, you know, worst case scenario, soft story building collapses.
Right.
Do you let them build back a soft story building? Because that's what they had before.
No, again, the safety standards will have to be met. That
Right.
would be per today's standards. If you do not allow soft story to be built today, obviously you won't be able to
Right.
build it. But that's a good example. There's an earthquake, and most of the soft story buildings are collapsed. And most of them are three-story buildings, as you know. Can they rebuild that three-story building with the same number of the units? Whereas the zoning code today probably will allow only half of it if you're lucky.
And are you going to waive things? Are you going to waive design review? You're going to waive other things, parking requirements. If it fell down and it was substandard in parking, are you going to let them have build a
Exactly.
brand new building with substandard parking? All of those are good questions, and all of those are going to have to be answered not through building safety.
Of course, it's more
But
zoning and planning.
Again,
Right.
we are involved in making sure that we have a voice at the table. One of the things that came up was San Jose. The HCD actually passed emergency housing legislation to look at something less than full compliance. And that was a big portion of that was based on San Jose had basically a park that turned into a tent city for the homeless people. And they were looking, what can they do? And so they were looking at, well, we have this other site, what can we build there? And it was interesting to see how, at that time, the building officials were about half and half. One says, no, you have to comply with the building code. The other half says, no, you have to look at ways to make it economically viable and see what we can live with. And that's why this San Jose went through the legislature, sponsored a bill, and got emergency housing. Now all of a sudden you have those unique situations where the conversation was a tough shed, 120 square foot shed. Someone goes, how can you say that that's housing for somebody? And somebody else would say, how can you say that's not better than the tent they were in? You have to have plugs at 6 feet. I don't want people with heaters in those. So, you know, I need a light. Yes, you do. How many? Inside, outside? Do you need a lock? All those little questions come up. How much insulation? Do I want to have it heated? If it's going to be a tough shed and it's an interim thing, do I have to provide them with heat to 72 degrees? Maybe not. Maybe they're still better off, and we don't want a heating element in the building that can catch fire. So, like I said, everyone's looking at solutions for the problem. We're short on housing. We're short on units. They're expensive. How do you get low-income housing? How do you address the interim housing of these people? That was a big conversation. So,
Well, clearly we
Wish
can't
we had
compromise on
answers.
the safety.
Hmm?
We can't compromise on the safety.
Right.
Anything else can give, but not that. If we want to make them available for people to live, right?
Right. And like I said, comfort versus necessity. And at some point, you know, they're saying, you know, people are saying, is it better than what they're living in now?
Right.
And so the building official of San Jose at that time was very practical. He says, I'm not saying no, I want to be at the seat so I can talk about it. And so he made a conscious decision to be there at all these meetings and as they were deciding what to do so that those decision makers had a technical expert in the room. And so very proud of that gentleman that he wasn't somebody that said, well, you just tell me what you want to do. He said, no, let me be at the seat.
Right.
And, you know, that's the kind of innovation that we want here in Glendale is we are part of it. We're part of the economic development, part of the housing. We're here to provide expertise.
So I guess if we do not have, if you don't know if we do have right now in Glendale a post-disaster reconstruction, maybe that's something to look into and put it in the codes.
One of the things was Calbo was looking at how do we standardize forms. Maybe there's standardized forms that we can give to people all over the state, and then everyone says the same thing. Well, the zoning aspect is unique in each city, but they are coming up with a template that actually people could just download from the state Calbo website.
I question, after fire, you know, it's everything burned except the foundation. Now, after that heat, it's not going to bother the rebars and the concrete. And building department, they enforce them to remove the foundation and put the new foundation. They enforce them?
Some do, some don't. They actually take it, did the heat damage the concrete?
Yes.
If the heat damaged the concrete, it'll be removed.
Yeah.
You need an
Plus-
engineer's observation.
Everything will be based, again, Glendale, we're in a high seismic area. We have a very arid climate. We're subject to high winds. We look at those things when additions, repairs, alterations are proposed. And so we will get an engineer on board on their side of the table and evaluate what they see.
Yeah.
We're not here just to be arbitrary, but we're here not to give up on the safety issues that are important to us.
Plus, when they're going to build, the old-time code was different. Like, you can put every 6-7 feet anchor bolt, this and that. But now, if they're going to build, then building code is supposed to be like stronger. but same square foot, same thing, but stronger foundation and like Harvey panels or anything to make a strong, same size building.
Yes. Shear wall requirements have
Yes.
changed significantly since even when I started.
Yeah.
You lose a house that was built in the 50s, we know it doesn't have current seismic standards. There are ways to improve, even if you build about the same footings or on the same floor plan, there's ways to add shear walls to different walls and have it evaluated so that we bring it up to the standards, so that once it's rebuilt, we know it's going to last another 50, 60 years. That's what we want. We don't want to approve something that we know will not last.
Yeah.
So, like I said, these are policies that we've developed, and we really do look at complying with those goals: safety, resiliency, making sure that the buildings built here will be around, and that our community is going to be safe in the buildings that they are either living in, going to school in, going to work in, going to to buy things. We want them safe.
Yeah, should be.
Now I have two people I want to introduce to you for the next topic of Building Safety Month. I know I went into it some, but I have Joseph and Celine. Celine was the one I was talking to you earlier about. Come on up. And they will do the second part of
All right.
the item.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late on this. Good afternoon, Chairman Kashishian, Commissioners, and City staff. My name is Joseph Rodarte, and I'm a supervisor with the Building and Safety Division of Community Development. As one of the newest members of the Building and Safety team, it's my pleasure to be here, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to go ahead and promote our upcoming event. I don't know how far Jan has gone into detail about the event, but as all of you are aware, Building and Safety, as you guys were hearing earlier, provides services to ensure safe building design and construction through enforcement of building codes and standards. Our service, one of the services of the Building and Safety Division, is to provide opportunities to our public to better understand the Building and Safety Division and what we do as a whole. Our primary vehicle for this public education is our Building and Safety Month, as well as the event that we put on annually. Building and Safety Month is nationally recognized as the month of May. It is an event the city of Glendale takes great pride in putting on, so much so that we've been recognized by the International Code Council on the events that we put on, their educational and public awareness. This year, our Building and Safety event will be held on May 23rd from 11 to 2 p.m. in Perkins Plaza. If I may, just give you guys a couple of flyers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
This year's weekly themes are partnering with code officials to build stronger, safer communities, advancing resilient communities through science and technology, protecting communities from disaster, safeguarding our water, improving education and training standards for a safer tomorrow. For this year's event, we decided to go outside the box and bring together people who could provide expertise in one of these themes or areas and incorporate this into a one-stop center of education and awareness. We solicited vendors, partners in our community, as well as industry leaders to come out and partner with us and showcase their wares, as well as making the public aware of what we're able to do and provide as a service to not only the city, but our sister cities as well. So we've been partnering with agencies, regulatory agencies such as the International Code Council will be there, Contractor State License Board, American Wood Council will be there. We also have our city departments that will be represented, the Glendale Fire Department, GWP, Planning and Public Works, and we also have other vendors, aside as Simpson Strong Tie and Tesla, Power DeWalt, that will be able to have little booths to explain what they do as far as their part in the whole entire building and safety component. Of special note, I would like to acknowledge the generosity of several of our vendors who partnered with our local ICC Basin chapter to provide educational opportunities via scholarships to Glendale Community College students pursuing academic endeavors in the field of agriculture, architecture, engineering, construction, and building and safety field. These scholarships will give students much needed exposure to the building and safety field as a possible future career. I would like to also thank our committee members for their tireless efforts in coordinating this event. And the last thing that I need to do is make sure that I invite all of you and your families and all community members to come out on May 23rd from 11 to 2 and come see, enjoy some food, visit with our industry partners, and find out what building and safety does. Thank you very much,
Thank you
gentlemen.
very much.
So, Mr. Kishishan, you want to move on to number 4?
Yes,
Item number
please.
4?
If you're done, number 3, presentations, yes, please.
Okay, item number 4, it's approval of minutes. And who's doing the first motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Second? Okay, thank
Roll
you.
call, please.
Okay, roll call. It's gonna be Board Member John Tatulian,
Yes.
Board Member Stephen Lee,
Yes.
Chairman Eric Kishishian,
Yes.
Board Member Aran Aharonian,
Yes.
Board Member Seven Hanesian.
Yes.
I also wanted to mention that oral communications today we have none.
Okay.
Old business, item number 6, old business, today we have none either. And number 7, new business, today we have none.
So we'll move on to item number 8.
Item number 8, reports. So as you know, you have in your packages, there are the information is in there. If you have any questions, you can talk to Mr. Bear. Okay? Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, now for item number 9,
Well, we're not there yet. For
we're not-
number 8, I want to.
Sorry.
Board members.
the reports are already in the package that was sent to you,
Correct, correct.
that was given to you. You do have questions for Mr.
Well, I
Bear
want to
now?
ask the board members if they have
Okay.
any questions.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we had our question, but Jan was very generous.
Oh, okay,
He talked about it
excellent.
during the 46 minutes that he was standing there.
Oh, you were timing him?
Yeah, I'm timing something else also. The TV screen is 7 seconds delayed from the
Wow,
actual scene.
well, that's expected.
So that's why Jan covered everything, and I asked him question about the ratio that's fluctuating around 1.
Little corrections. When you say Jan, I keep thinking of the previous building official, Jan Edwards.
She was
This
retired.
gentleman is Jan. Call him Jan, even though it's spelled the same way. Okay, so Mr. Bear, Jan Bear, thank you very much for the presentation. You covered everything apparently from A to Z. So if no other questions or anything, they'll move on. Yes.
Adjournment? I need who's doing the first motion for the adjournment? Who's doing it?
I'd like
Okay.
to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
second it.
Okay. That would be Mr.
So the meeting is so
Tatulian.
adjourned. We'll see you next time.
Next meeting is when?
Uh-oh.
So it says the 23rd on this flyer.
20.
I'm sorry,
Is that,
who's the second
No,
one
that's
that
not
is
the meeting.
doing the motion?
No, no,
I know
I'm
Mr.
saying-
Tatulian is first. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I gave a first, somebody gave a
Mhm.
second.
The second one?
You second the
I
motion?
second it.
Yeah.
You? Okay, thank you.
I'm just, I was just raising the issue that the 23rd is on a Wednesday, I believe.
Is it?
Is that the same day as our
Oh.
proposed meeting? Or is it one week before that? Okay.
Is there a meeting on the 16th?
It would be at 2 anyway, so this finishes at 2.
Can we postpone it till 23rd? I'll be out of town. I'm telling you from now. After the event.
No, that's not possible.
After the event, so that we
The
can
event
drive
is until
by.
2 o'clock. Our meeting starts at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
By the way, we don't have to be on camera. This could be.
It will finish at 2 o'clock, then we come upstairs.
But
Are we done with the meeting?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yes.
We're done with the meeting.
I
Thank
thought
you.
we weren't going to have a meeting in May. This was supposed to be.
Yeah.